All right, so we are recording now. I want to welcome everybody to this MAP Continuing Professional Education webinar with Dr. Gretchen Spreitzer from the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. You've got Dr. Spreitzer's information on the screen there. She is just one of the leaders in this field, and of course working with the skill that I laughingly told her in a conversation earlier this week that when I was going through MAP, my older son was in college, younger son was getting ready to go, and I told both of them I'd be happy to pay for any MBA they wanted to get as long as it was at the University of Michigan. That's how impressed I was with everything that we've seen from that program, and of course all of it that's come out since. We're going to be looking at the positive leadership game and playing the game, so I want to be able to get us into that. I just want to note for you, for those who've been tracking along, our next two MAP CPEs are on the screen. On June 4th, we will be doing positive guidance, applying positive psychology and career and guidance counseling with Jolana Burke. Jolana is was scheduled to be with us in February, and we had to reschedule that because of a conflict on her side. We've been able to reschedule it for June 4th, so we're looking forward to that. And then on June 18th, we're going to pick up Dr. Mel Rudd doing the power of being present, expanding perception of time through temporal focus. And we'll have some materials out on her research prior to that, but I think it's a mindfulness-oriented program. I think you're going to find it interesting. All right, so we've got Dr. Spreitzer's here with us, as is typical. I am going to shut off my mic and camera as she takes us through this. During the course of this, she's going to have some of our participants who are ready to go with us to play the leadership game for us. And as we go along, as usual, on the left-hand side, you've got a chat screen where you can enter questions or comments. If they seem to be something that we should respond to in it, Dr. Spreitzer may do that, but if not, we will get back to them at the end of it. So, Gretchen, thank you very much for doing this. I'm going to shut my stuff down and let you take over and take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Dave. I'm delighted to have this opportunity. Thank you very much for inviting me. And for those of you that aren't familiar, I'm part of our Center for Positive Organizations here at the Ross School of Business. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is one tool that we offer through our center for use in either the classroom or in professional practice. And at the end of my presentation, I hope you'll remind me once we finish the game. I have some an outline of some of the other resources that our center offers, and we can take a look at those as well quickly. And maybe there's a webinar in the future that one of my colleagues would like to do to share with you some of that. So on this, I hate to say it, snowy day in Ann Arbor. We had a snow flurry earlier today. I'm particularly delighted to have this bit of sunshine and spend some time with each of you. This is a game that Bob Quinn and I created about 1 year ago. We presented it, used it for the first time at the Positive Business Conference that we'll be hosting here in May. We had about 300 people playing it across several different rooms, and we were very struck by the kind of impact that it made on people, and it was a wonderful icebreaker to get our conference started. Since then, we've used it with many, many different kinds of groups, and I'll share with you some of those examples and stories as we go through. So just as a kind of way to get kind of you thinking about what positive leadership is, I'd like to ask each of you to think about who is the most positive leader that you have ever worked with. Now, I'm not asking you to think about somebody like Nelson Mandela here, obviously a very positive, impactful leader, but I'm asking you to think about a leader that you have actually worked with yourself. Somebody, it could be in a professional domain, it could be in a volunteer domain, but the most positive leader that you have ever worked with. And I'd like to ask you to use the chat feature just to give quick descriptions or quick adjectives that describe that positive leader, what some of their most profound characteristics were. All right, so I'm seeing fiercely optimistic. Somebody's looking on the bright side of things. Caring about people, who are working on the project really takes their opinions into account, believe the team could accomplish anything, incredibly present in every moment, personable, interested in me and the project. All right, those are great ones. A lot of positive characteristic, helping everyone be successful. So I'm hearing something about this as a leader who really connected with and engaged the people that they were working with. Leveling status, I like that one. Somebody who really put themselves into the process rather than kind of guiding it from above was one. Put their whole selves into it. So those are great descriptions. And when we play the game, we always like to start with some kind of stimulus to get people in a positive mode, because of course people can come to any situation with all of their concerns and worries and burdens and so forth. And so we find that if we start the game with just getting people to put themselves into a positive mode, reflecting on something in their past that has been positive, it really helps set the stage. And if I was in a environment where we were face-to-face, I would ask people before we kind of use the chat feature to share with a neighbor. And again, that's another powerful way of making a connection right from the very beginning and creating some positive energy in the group. But it was still helpful to us, again, in kind of setting the stage. Now, in June, last June, Jane Dutton and I think many of you are familiar with Jane because she teaches in the MAP program. We edited a book called How to Be a Positive Leader. And in this book, we really tried to, one, draw on the most profound research on positive leadership, the most impactful leadership that's been published in high quality outlets. And we tried to identify the kind of key thought leaders in the realm of positive leadership and ask them to bring their best game to writing a chapter about their lens or their take on positive leadership. And as we wrote this book, we identified a number of themes about what positive leaders do. And I think if you look at the chat feature, you'll see that these are the kind of themes that that came out in our conversation too. But positive leaders are people that really foster positive relationships with their people, foster positive relationships with the environment that they're part of, with society, with customers, with suppliers. They're people that have this way to connect with others in a meaningful way. Positive leaders also are ones who are able to unlock resources within any system. A key theme of our book was leaders who make small moves or small changes that unlock resources that are hidden within any system. So too often we see leaders that are looking outside for something better, or outside for new resources, or outside for infusion of creative ideas. But the leaders that we highlight in our book, and by the way, each chapter also has a short case example of a leader who really exemplifies that characteristic of leaders, of positive leaders. And we found that these are leaders who really unlock resources within the system. So they're leaders that do more with less. They find ways to bring out the very best in the systems that they're part of. The third major theme that came out of our book was this notion of tapping into the good with higher purpose, or creating work that's meaningful, that people really care about. And so there's this idea of higher purpose or vision, something good that people are attracted to beyond things like profits or customer satisfaction. It's something deeper than that. And then the last key theme that came out in our book is this idea of creating resourceful change and resilience. Again, rather than thinking about resistance to change as a bad thing, these are leaders who are embracing resistance as a way of learning and growing and really engaging people at deep levels for them to be attracted to change and also to be resilient with the inevitable hiccups that often come as organizations and people are making deep change. So when we look at these themes that came out of the book, it made us begin to think about, well, what is a way that we can start helping people actually experience those things in the moment. So at the Ross School of Business, we have a strong focus on action-based learning. So rather than using cases or lectures, we focus a lot of our attention on how to have people actually experience what it is that we're teaching. And of course, we do that through things like projects in companies, through simulations, but also through tools like these kind of games. And so we created this positive leadership game as a way of actually getting people to experience some of these key themes or criteria of positive leadership. And what we found is that indeed, as people are playing the game, you can see some of these elements come out unobtrusively, come out without people thinking about them as they're moving through the game. And so we're going to give you a chance to experience that a little bit today by either participating in the game or observing the game. So as I mentioned at the start of this session, we've used this game now with a variety of different audiences that I hope you might see a connection to a group that you might consider using this game with in the future. So we've used the game with a small group of people, say 5 people in a staff meeting who are trying to deal with an issue or get a new team started, up to, as I was saying, the Positive Business Conference. We had 250 people playing the game across 50 different tables, and then we debriefed it with the 250 people. We've run the game with people with very little experience, college students, all the way up to senior executives in our executive education programs here at the Ross School of Business. And we've also played the game with people who know each other already, people from the same unit, like the staff meeting that I talked about, or a group of students that are in a year-long lab program that we have here, to diverse audiences where players don't know each other at all. And there's pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages of using it with each of those different kinds of groups. But you can imagine with a diverse audience where people don't know each other, it's a way to build trust and engagement very quickly with a group. And they're more likely to offer really innovative ideas because they don't come necessarily from the same culture, organizational culture, or societal culture. All right, so in this game, we have created cards. So in the actual game, there's 88 resource cards. And these are cards that are actually taken from 3 different sources. Our initial book back from 2005 entitled Positive Organizational Scholarship, Foundations of a New Discipline, which was really the start of this whole movement in positive organizational studies. Also, the cards were drawn from our 2012 Handbook of Positive Organizational Scholarship that Kim and I edited, and that is has over 80 different chapters, again, very research-based, and drawing on key thought leaders in the realm of POS. And then most recently, the book I just introduced to you, How to Be a Positive Leader, that has more of a practice bent that Jane and I edited, but that also really reviews the key research on positive leadership. And so each card is drawn from some of the research. I don't know if you can see that. So here's what one card looks like. This one says strengths focus. Employees are more engaged when they feel leadership focuses on the strengths of each person. In a meeting, have people discuss personal strengths and how to better utilize them. And then one of the other cool things about the card is that it also has a source at the bottom. So if somebody's really struck by the idea on a card, it actually gives them a place to go and learn more. And so this card is drawn from the Foundations of Positive Organizational Scholarship on page 121. So it provides some real depth too, if somebody chooses to take it to the next level. All right, so 88 cards that are drawn from research. Let me show you how we actually play the game now. So the first thing that I'm going to ask each of you to do, whether you're playing or not, is to think about a relationship, group, or organization that you care about. It could be your work organization. It could be about some other organization that you're involved with, say in a volunteer realm or in your community. It could even be in your family, something that you care about and would like to improve. And so at this point in the game, we'd ask each person to take a minute and reflect on some challenge, something that they would like help with. And so I'm going to ask you to do that, to think about something that is happening in your own life in an organization that you're part of that you would like some help with. So without seeing feedback from you, I'm not sure how easy this task is for you. Or if you're sitting there scratching your head saying, gosh, I can't really think of something. Just to give a couple examples. All right, some of you are responding back on the chat feature, but recently I had somebody say they had a new employee that they were really wanting to onboard strongly. They were a person that was coming into a team that was well developed already, and they wanted that person to be able to hit the ground running and really feel like they were part of the team. There's one example. Another example, a non-professional example, we had somebody in an executive education program talk about how his son was part of a soccer program, youth soccer program, in which there were a number of kids that came from disadvantaged backgrounds whose parents weren't able to be involved by going to the games, travel games, or contributing snacks, or in all the other various ways that parents were helping. And so they were trying to figure out how they could get help with engaging these parents and these disadvantaged kids to really feel like they were part of the team as well. Okay, well, I hope you're able to think about something that you would like some help with. And sometimes I have to say, asking for help is one of the most difficult things that we do. We like to help others. That might be part of our predisposition, but asking for help for ourselves can be difficult. And it also, in the game, it's also important that people know that they're going to have to make their requests public, at least to their table of 5 people. So that's an important piece. Whatever they are writing down is something that they need to be comfortable sharing. All right, so once everybody has a request for help, then we move to the cards. And ideally, the game is set up so that there would be 5 people seated at a table. Round or square is fine, but somebody at the table is chosen as the dealer, and their job is to shuffle the deck and then deal 5 cards to each player. So if I was the dealer, then the player to my left, I'm going to call the focal person, and they're going to kick off the game by describing their request for help in about 1 minute. Now, as that person makes their request for help, all of the other players are now going to start looking through their set of 5 cards. Everybody's going to have different cards, right? Because there are 88 of them, but they're going to start looking at their 5 cards and think about, Gretchen's just asked this question about onboarding a new employee onto our team, and how can we really help them kick off that process well? And they're going to look at their cards and think about which one could be most helpful to that person. And one at a time, the other players at the table are going to choose one of their cards, and they're going to lay it down in front of the focal person, and they're going to describe why they think this card could be helpful to them, why they think this strategy of, my initial card was a strengths focus, why this might help the person come on to the team strong. So maybe in this case, it would be, when I first introduce this person to the team, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what unique strengths and gifts and talents that this person could bring to the team. And then once I do that for the new person on the team, I'm going to ask each of the other people to also share what their strengths are, or maybe do that. I could do that myself, also sharing what I see the strengths are of each person in the group. That would be an example of how this card potentially could be helpful to the person who made the request. We ask people to take about 30 seconds to give their suggested solution to the focal person. If in looking at your 5 cards, you say, I don't really think any of these is a good solution, but it's triggered another idea for me, maybe something from my own work experience, maybe something I've seen somebody else do. And so if one of your 5 cards isn't a good solution, and you can think of a better solution or strategy, you can share that instead. So once I've given my solution to the focal person, then the person sitting next to me would do the same thing. They would say, okay, here's my card. My card's about authenticity, and here's how I think authenticity could be helpful, could be a solution, and why. So you're going to go around the table until each of the 4 people have offered their solution and played their card in front of that focal person. When each person has laid their card, the focal person's then going to select one of those 4 cards and explain why they chose it and why they think it would be helpful. And then the person who laid that card gets a point. So if you've ever played the game Apples to Apples, it's kind of like that. You're trying to provide a card that is going to be most likely to be selected by the focal person. After the focal person selects the card, then each player is dealt a new card, a replacement card, so that you always have 5 cards in your hand. Okay. So then it makes sense. We move to the next focal person. So we'd go around the table, and we'd move to the left, and that next person becomes the focal person. And now they make their request. People look at their current set of 5 cards, and the process is repeated. And the person with the most points at the end of the round, after you've gone all the way around, is the winner. Usually we play the game with just the single round, but sometimes when there is more time, we have played it with multiple rounds, and it doesn't get old in even 2 or 3 rounds. It just depends on how much time that you have. All right, so let's try the game virtually. We've had 4 people who were nice enough to respond to Dave's invitation to play the game with us. And they are Travis, Jonathan, John, Susanna, and Katie. And hi, Katie. We talked to the rest of you before the game started, but Katie's actually played the game before, so I don't think she needed the short tutorial that we presented at the beginning. Now, one thing that's going to be a little bit different about this game is that since we're not together, you don't have cards in front of you. So I've randomly chosen 5 cards. In a real working of the game, Travis would have a different set of 5 cards from Jonathan's cards, from John's cards. But here, just for simplicity purposes in this demonstration, we'll all work with the same 5 cards. Now, the one thing I would also suggest, so that we all have a chance to play a little bit, is that if others have a solution or an idea to the focal person's request, please feel free to share it with the chat feature as well. Okay, so if we could have the 5 players unmute themselves. Is there somebody who would like to go first? And make
Sure, I can go first.
Okay, great. Is this Susanna?
It is.
Okay, great.
So I work with a nonprofit, And one of the challenges that we've been having recently is there's a lot of interest from social work students here at our university in Seattle, at the University of Washington, in volunteering with us. And our executive director is feeling kind of overwhelmed by their requests. At the same time, the rest of us are really excited that there is so much passion and excitement. And we want to be able to use that and tap in and have those people, like actualize the things that they want to do and move, help move our purpose forward. But it seems like we're really like strapped for time, and because they need supervision from someone, we've just had a tough time kind of making it work.
So your request for help is?
So let's see. I guess my request for help is figuring out how to enable volunteers, interns or volunteers, to provide support to our organization, while at the same time respecting that our leadership has kind of a limited amount of time to be able to supervise them.
Okay, so Travis, Jonathan, John, and Katie, do you have any questions for Susanna before you look at the 5 cards and begin to think about solutions?
I have a quick question. It's Jonathan. Susanna, is anyone in the organization responsible for the volunteer community?
Not totally. I mean, we have volunteer coordinators or volunteers a little bit, but only in certain parts of our programs. So the answer is not really.
Okay.
Okay, so Travis, Jonathan, John, and Katie, if you can look at these 5 cards, or if something strikes you from your own experience, what kind of suggestions could you make to help Susanna?
I think I have something. This is John.
Hey, John.
I think I would probably give the self-empowerment card. And my thought was, talking about kind of turning the beliefs of disempowerment into confidence, engaging the interested volunteers in building, a volunteer position to manage the rest of the volunteers. So almost putting the first challenge out to the interested volunteers to kind of self-empower them to build a sustainable way to volunteer for the organization. So that's kind of what I thought of when looking at self-empowerment. So I would give you the self-empowerment card.
Thank you.
Does somebody else have a suggestion?
So this is Jonathan. Susanna, I would look at the relational landscape and find the champions in the organization who want to enable this large group of volunteers and work with them to try and find the solution and not spend time worrying about the folks that are naysayers.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, this is Travis, and I will chime in on Jonathan's astute question and play the strengths focus card, thinking that perhaps there are, some folks in the organization who have, both the interest and the strengths to provide some leadership in helping manage this unwieldy group and really get the most out of their interest and their ability to serve the organization.
Thank you.
All right, Katie might still be muted, Dave. Katie, are you able to share anything? Well, your chat, do you want to, Dave, Katie was the only one that we didn't have on the line ahead of time.
Maybe she needs to be promoted to a presenter. I don't know if that's...
Katie, you may need to enter an audio pin to do it. I think you're on by phone, and you may need to do that to unmute yourself. You are a presenter.
And while we're waiting for Katie, if others have suggestions in the chat feature, you should be, no, you're very welcome to contribute as well. Well, it looks like we've had our first technical glitch. I thought we were doing really well. And maybe Katie will be able to join us shortly. But why don't, Susanna, you have, okay, wait, we have another suggestion through the chat feature. Reach out to other successful mentoring programs to see how they've managed this process. That's an interesting idea. So there may be other groups in your area that also have large numbers of volunteers, and how do they manage that process? And then here's another one. Perhaps build earlier example and get people to think of times when they've had things like this work well in the past. And then finally, maybe using the idea of hope. If you imagine 3 months from now, the volunteers are being used, what it's like. How does it seem to be working in this imagined future? Really neat ideas. So Susanna, at this point, in the actual game, we'd ask you to say one that particularly resonated with you and why.
Let's see. So I really, there are a few, so trying to pick one is hard, but I'll, I really like the idea of building that volunteer position to make it sustainable, because it feels like it feels like really, I think even the people who are, and I liked kind of working with the people who are not naysayers too. But even the people who are naysayers, I think really want it to happen. They just feel kind of like at a loss for the time. And so, working to get the people who already want it to happen to think about that imagined future and what it would look like, and creating a position that would help, a volunteer position that would help make that possible, that would check in with the executive director in a way that wasn't overwhelming for her. That sounds really cool.
So if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the first suggestion from John. Yeah. So in the game, that would mean John would get a point in this first request. At this point, we would move to letting somebody else make one of the other four of you make a request. While you're thinking about that, just for a moment, let me just say, Susanna, that your feeling that you wanted to pick more than one or combine solution is really, really common. And in fact, I think once you get people in that positive mode, they begin to think really creatively and begin to see how there could be tidbits from different ones that you could piece together to create something even better than any of the original ideas that came out. So we see a lot of that happen when we play the game, and sometimes people break the rules and I'm going to give three people half a point because I'm taking each of their parts into the process. And my feeling about that is, hey, that's great. If people are reinventing the game in a way that allows them to really engage the process, I'm a big believer in that. But I don't tell people that up front. But often as, I'm moving around the tables, people will say, oh, can I give points to two ideas? Or, the best idea is really something that came from combining three. And I always say that's great. The more we can empower the game players, I think the better. But there is something kind of fun for somebody to get a point or points out of it. All right, Katie, can we hear you now, maybe?
Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Yay!
Katie, did you have a solution to offer?
I don't want to hold things up. We can move on with that. I know you wanted me to talk at some point later about experience.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so does one of the other four have a request to make?
I'd be happy.
All right, I'll go. So this is Jonathan. Here's the background. I have a group of CEOs. I run a peer group, and they get together once a month to help each other move their businesses forward. And one of these individuals I have an issue with, and there's a lack of trust, to put a fine point on it. So what I am asking for is help building trust first with me and this individual, and then with the group. Okay, so that was nicely done, as Susanna's was, concise. And do any of you have questions about Jonathan's request? Clarification?
Without having to share any specifics, could you share a little bit maybe about, was there a breach of trust, or is it just more like a feeling?
Yeah, the manifestations of this are that their attendance at these meetings is poor, and when they do attend, when this individual does attend, he tends to be distracted, so he's not fully engaged. And then when I've met with him one-on-one, he's just reluctant to open up. If I ask a probing question, he deflects and moves to something else.
Okay, so very helpful. Now, again, the process would be to look at the cards. Now, if we were playing this in the real world, people would have different cards. We'd be adding new cards to their set of 5, and so we'd have some other cards to work with here. But again, you can go beyond your cards to your own experiences as well. So if one of the other 4 of you has a suggestion for a solution, or if anybody has something they want to share on the chat feature, please go ahead.
So since I didn't go last time, I'll maybe start this time.
Great.
Jonathan, this is Katie, and I would start with a relational landscape card. And it could be something you do with him one-on-one or in the group, a discussion about what is the meaning of, the group's work together. It would get at, the element of trust, engagement, mindfulness, etc., where maybe you could get that out on the table and seek to get some agreement and alignment between the group overall.
Great.
Someone else? That's a nice one. Yep, this is Travis here. I can't say I find any one of these 5 cards to be just right, so I'm going to go off menu here and play what I'll call the straight talk card.
So you're going to fire him.
You mentioned that he's been a little reluctant to open up and stuff. Sometimes I find that asking a pointed question like, why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of participating in this session? And maybe try to get a sense from him really what his motivation is. And that will either, I reckon, open up some ground for you to work with, or perhaps reveal that maybe he doesn't really want to be there, and then take action accordingly that way. Straight talk.
Okay, great. Thank you, Travis. Jonathan or John or Susanna?
The one that I might offer would be, and I guess this is from the book Crucial Conversations, and I'm sure other places, but the idea of mutual purpose. So establishing like even if it's not that if you do want to keep him there, and I think it kind of goes off of the last suggestion as well, that even if he doesn't seem to have if he's not there for the exact same purposes, there might be a higher purpose that you do have in common. And so just finding a higher kind of mutual purpose that you both have in common.
Great. And then John, do you have a suggestion?
I was actually looking at the emotional framing card, thinking that it might be a valuable conversation with the group to tweak that a little bit to say what is the best thing personally and professionally that's happened because you trusted someone, to kind of bring that trust piece into the conversation with the group. But I think that could go well in conjunction with some of the other ideas that were mentioned as well.
Very cool. So it's like bringing the trust into the conversation. Yeah. All right. So Jonathan, you've got 4 suggestions there. I don't see anything else in the chat feature. Which solution particularly resonated with you and why?
Okay, so all good ideas. Thank you very much. But I'm going to give John's suggestion a go. I've actually tried the straight talk with him, and it wasn't as productive as I would have liked. So I think shifting this into the positive emotional framing and get him and others to weigh in on what is the best thing that's happened when you were able to trust somebody, I think really may open up the conversation in a new way. So, John, thank you.
All right, so that's a point for John, and let's see. Wow, John, you're on a roll here. Is that right?
I'm not competitive at all.
I like it. All right, hey, we have something on the chat feature here too. Maybe before talking to him, to role play as him. I'm new to this meeting. I don't really know anyone. I'm kind of scared, to help develop more understanding of what he might be feeling. Maybe get some insights from that. Interesting. And then Lisa's responding, oh, sure, John. I guess that was about the competitive point, huh? All right. So some really good ideas there, too. You know, the other thing I would just suggest, and this is the way I start my first class in any semester, is I have people share 2 stories in small groups, share 2 stories of something deeply meaningful in their life. I give them a set of trigger questions, but they're all ones that involve making themselves a little bit vulnerable. So something deeply meaningful that happened to them, a failure that they experienced that they recovered from, a set of triggers like that. And you go around the table and each person shares one story, and then they share a second story after everybody's shared a first story, and then they go through a process saying what do they have in common. And it's kind of a swift trust building process. It gets that act of vulnerability from the very beginning, kind of gets people into the same mode. And that might not be a good solution once the group's already established, as yours is, Jonathan, but I find it's a really useful way to build trust quickly with a group that's new.
Gretchen, do you have those trigger questions available?
I'd be happy to share them. I don't have them right in front of me now, but I'd be happy to share.
You know. Thanks.
All right, that's great. So we've had Susanna and Jonathan make their requests. How about John or Travis? Katie? Actually, why don't we not have Katie go making her request, because I'm going to have her share with the group a little bit about her prior experience playing the game. But Travis or...
Sure. This is Travis. I'll go. So my boss, a division president, has made a series of decisions involving budget and HR and strategic focus, contrary to the recommendations of my group and myself. And this has demoralized, my group, and it's causing uncertainty, doubt, and disengagement. And I'd love to ask the group for any suggestions about how to deal with this.
Any questions for Travis? Clarification points? Okay.
Travis?
Yeah.
Was, in making these decisions, did he seek the input of the team?
Actually, no. It was, even though I had driven a consensus amongst the team that culminated in the recommendations, the decisions he came to didn't involve additional engagement with the team or myself, for that matter.
And did he share with you why he did that? Or have you had a conversation with him about why?
Yeah, it's been tough to communicate. In some cases, he's given very kind of straight answers that we haven't necessarily agreed with, but at least was understood. And in other cases, it was really more kind of ambiguous how the decisions got made.
Okay, helpful questions. All right, using these cards, or maybe these are getting a little bit old hat now. Remember, in the actual game, you'd have new cards that are being added to the discussion. What suggestions would you make to Travis? And again, we have chat feature. If you have ideas for the chat, please use that too.
I think I'd play the relational landscape card. And really have him kind of identify, like what the meaning is for everyone. So what is the vision that he's trying to create with the changes that he's made? And to be clear about, like the places that he's made. So as the card says, be clear about those that make work difficult. So where he's made decisions that are at odds with what the team has asked, or where they haven't been consulted to talk about, why that happened and how that's going to happen in the future or not.
Great. That was Susanna, right? How about the others?
This is Katie.
So
to go with something different, I'd probably choose emotional framing and try and concentrate on what people can control. By starting meeting with what's going well, and helping people choose a more positive outlook.
Okay.
This is John. I was going to go with the strengths focus card, so maybe asking him to identify the strengths of the team members that he thinks will help accomplish the decisions or move towards the decisions that he's made. That may or may not work for all of the team members, but I think helping engage the team around how they can contribute to the direction that he's clearly outlined might be helpful for the team.
Great.
And I would play a different card. I'd call it the empathy card, and just try and engage him on a discussion around, given these decisions, his perception of how the team's going to respond and their ability to, rise to the occasion, mostly to test whether he's aware that there's as much disagreement as Travis is alluding to.
Okay, so Travis, you've got 4 suggestions there. I don't see anything in the chat feature to add to the mix. Which one of those resonated most with you?
Yeah, first of all, I really love how, each of the angles is, has something to offer, and I really appreciate it. However, I've come down to a tie, neither of which is John, shockingly. Sorry, John. But I'm going to go with a combination of Susanna's relational landscape and Jonathan's empathy card, which I actually found both suggestions to be somewhat related in that they focus on really more direct engagement of the president with the team and more, of a direct connection to them is part of exploring and understanding, the impact of these decisions on the team, and hopefully that engagement will lead to, if not, changes to the decisions, at least better, acceptance of the decisions by the team members. So thank you very much, you guys.
Great. Very helpful response. All right. Last but not least, John, and this time for you to make a request, and unfortunately not a chance to get more points. So
that's okay. So I work at a college, and I teach a leadership class for first-year students. And the challenge I'm having this semester, and have noticed other times, is critical thinking skills. And a lot of times my students just want to take, whatever we present in class as kind of, they just take it as fact and don't question it or try to make their own meaning of it or figure out what works best for them, but just kind of accept things. So I'm trying to figure out ways that when I approach the introduction to this course, and as I wrap up the semester with the one I'm teaching now, how can I encourage more critical thinking from the students that are taking a course to be engaged in leadership development, but then don't seem to demonstrate critical thinking to make it their own, but just want to take what's presented.
Okay. Any clarification questions for John?
Have you tried texting them a BuzzFeed article on critical thinking? I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
I have not, but that might be a good idea.
In some ways, your question is a little bit similar to Jonathan's with his CEO not kind of being so fully engaged. It's a different kind of engagement, but it's kind of interesting. All right, so you have these cards in front of you, but you can also draw from your own experience. And again, people with the chat feature are welcome to use it. And Dave, I'm noticing about the time. Do we finish at 1?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the target time to finish. We can run over a little bit better.
Okay, so let's give some quick solutions, and then we'll.
This is Katie. I think this is a great opportunity for a strengths focus by a little bit of time with students on identifying and understanding what their strengths are, and then asking them in the assignments to digest and reflect or do something with it relative to their strengths. It gives them an opportunity to make it their own.
Great, thank you. Others?
Yeah, this is Jonathan. I'd go off model or off card, and I'd go with scenario planning, and try and present them both sides of an argument or two, and force them to decide which is better.
Okay.
I would play the self-empowerment card. So I guess I'm assuming that you've already talked to them about critical thinking, and so maybe to challenge them to do new but doable tasks within that, as the card says, and support them. So maybe helping chunk it down to what would it look like to do that, and then recognizing and celebrating those small wins.
Great. All right. And last but not least, Travis?
Yeah, I'll try a spin on the emotional framing card by really suggesting that maybe at the beginning, like this card suggests, or at the end of a class, that you attempt to get the students to really talk about what resonated with them, what worked for them, and why. And I think that would almost by definition require them to do some reflection and some explanation, as opposed to just choosing something because.
Okay, so John, was there one of the solutions that particularly resonated with you?
Yeah, I would probably do a half-point combination between Jonathan and Susanna. The scenario planning and the self-empowerment, I think, are things that we've touched on, but I think giving specific scenarios with both sides might be helpful with that. And then I think recognizing kind of the small wins, so finding a way to recognize when they are demonstrating those skills, I think would be something that might be helpful to kind of continue to build their self-empowerment to do that.
Okay, so thank you, first of all, to all of you for playing. It looks like, according to my calculation, that John had 2 points, which was just a little bit more than the second place person. So if you were playing the game and really wanted to build up the competitive juices, you could offer a small prize to the winner, like a Starbucks gift certificate or a book or something like that. But as you saw, some of the competitive juices come out even without any kind of prize. Now, Katie has actually used the game herself. Katie, do you want to just share a little bit about your own experience using the game in real life?
Sure, be happy to, Gretchen. So I'm a business manager for DuPont, and I used it at the end of a business team meeting. We had a 2-day session working on both some short-term and long-term goals. Kind of typical with these sessions is at the end, people get kind of anxious about wrapping up, catching flights, getting out of the chair because they've been sitting there for 2 days, and so so they're leaving the meeting. These are functional leaders that are leaving the meeting with a lot of to-dos, coming out of the meeting, the things they have to get with the customer on, or go back to the people in their team and get project information together, or so forth. And so we know that they're packing their bags and they're leaving with the what. I got these whats to do, and so I use this by really a way to interject the how. So we dealt the cards out. We broke up in small teams. These are not people that have background or serious background in positive psychology. So I kind of floated around and helped everyone, but everybody kind of caught on pretty quick. And their go-do was to describe in their little group what was the biggest go-do that they had from the meeting. What was the most important thing that they had to accomplish coming out of the meeting to support the team? And then, of course, the other team members help them with the how by using the cards from the Positive Leadership game. Again, people with no real experience at this, they caught on really quickly and were so energized. I was really amazed, so much so that they asked to go for a second round, so we did 2 rounds of it. We were at one of my plant sites. I had operators peeking in the door asking, what's going on in here? You guys are so loud. You're always so quiet, What are you doing? I had people peeking in. What are you doing in there? And I think another real a real positive effect that it had on it, and we're all familiar with, peak end experience, what tends to be kind of a non-ending to this meeting, to these kinds of meetings, turned out to be a really great peak end to it. And people really left the meeting really super energized. It gave kind of a last jolt of teamwork. And I think it's kind of almost like a random act of kindness that you're helping someone else out. So I felt that there were a lot of positive unintended consequences by using this as the ending to my meeting.
Yeah.
I've also used it kind of from a personal standpoint and coaching, where I tell someone, deal yourself 5 cards every morning and think about what you've got to do for the day, and pick one card that kind of applies to what you're doing, that you're gonna try, you're gonna practice.
Katie,
that's a way to better integrate these skills into your own day.
Yeah, I think there's, as you mentioned, lots of different uses for the cards beyond the game, whether for others or for even for ourselves, for inspirational ideas. So again, I appreciate all of you tuning in, and I appreciate the 5 of you for playing the game. I think the other thing that happens is it starts conversations that continue beyond the game too. So now you know a little bit more about these 5 colleagues of yours. And so, when you run into them in the lunchroom, or, at the next lunch and learn, or in the coffee shop, now you have some kind of joint experience to talk a little bit more about. I know we're at the end of our time. If you go to our Center for Positive Organizations website, you can get more information about the game and how to order it. There's also information about the other tools that our center offers, and I encourage you to take a look at those as well. And I really appreciate all the rest of you contributing to the chat feature too. I've had a lot of fun working with you today, so thank you very much.
Gretchen, thank you so much. We super appreciate you spending an hour of your busy time with us.
Happy to.
Gretchen, we do appreciate it. Let me ask just one question, kind of tightening up. We might, if you've got just a minute to answer a few questions. Some might want to put some in on the chat service. But one question that I had, have you found that the game can be enhanced by some training in some of the positive psychology concepts, strengths, for example, for folks before they do it? You're working in I'm thinking about leadership development kind of programs where you bring this in down the road. Any experience with that?
Yeah, well, when we use it with our executive education leaders, it's part of a week-long program, right? So they are getting exposure to a lot of these ideas before the game and after the game. I think it gives you a deeper understanding of what's in these cards. I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it's a really a nice advantage if people do have deeper understandings about what these concepts are that are in the cards. But I think the cards, like with college students, works just fine, even if you don't have that.
Even if they don't, great. And, one thing I noticed was that in playing a few rounds of the game, if you were doing it actually the way it says, where people drawing cards and they're listening to other people talk about, they're not all looking at the same 5 cards.
Right.
They're going to hear, I think, every round, the first round, they get 8 ideas. Kind of elaborated out of positive organizational studies, and then another 4 each other round. So you play 4 or 5 rounds, they're walking out with 20, 24 positive organizational studies ideas that they've heard discussed and applied in context.
Yep. And a lot of times the solutions, people think, oh, I could actually use that solution for this issue that I'm wondering about myself. So they leave with more than one solution as well.
A lot of stuff going on. So we're getting some questions over there. We'll check about slides to go on our website. One question that did came in, I think Travis Millman had said, have you guys thought about a digital version of the